This Herzberg article is another Harvard Business Review classic. At about 5 years ago, it was the most reprinted article ever published in the Harvard Business Review. They haven't kept those statistics up to date, but as of 5 years ago, it was about 4 times as many reprints as the second most popular article. Herzberg had much of his career at Indiana University, but spent the end of his career at the University of Utah. He came to the University of Utah after this was published, continued to do his work, was really a fabulous speaker, a very gifted speaker, and lived a half a block from me until he died in 2000. This is a classic because it addresses some really fundamental issues that define organizational behavior. You've been introduced to them and how we think about managing people and leading people. And these fundamental issues have to do with the difference of how do we motivate people's internal desire, how do we, in the words of Kouzes and Posner, engage the mind, engage the heart in the workplace versus just the hands. And this is what he calls and comes to be known in the field as intrinsic motivation. It's the internal motivation people have to do their work. Herzberg explains this not just in terms of what the term means, but why is it an important business goal? What does this give us as a value add to our business to have a motivated workforce? His approach is extremely pragmatic. He is not an idealist. Some of the things that make the article interesting is he has a fairly withering critique of the human relations approaches that followed out of the Hawthorne experiments. And it gives you a little bit of a sense of his personality as well. He was quite an amazing individual. In reading the article, I'd like you to look for and pay real close attention to this critique of human relations management, which was the dominant perspective at the time Herzberg was writing the article. I talk about the human relations management approaches and the failure of human relations management in the lecture material. Pay close attention to what his explanation of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, what do these things mean? This is still very fundamental to how we approach management. And in this class, we're going to continually talk about internal and external models of motivation. We, of course, are going to adopt a very blended approach to this, partly because in work organizations, pay matters. It's how we get people to show up. It's not necessarily how we can motivate them, but possibly. We're always attracted to bonus systems and contingent pay systems. Those are still very much a part of the management landscape, and we want to understand those and how they work. Herzberg also in this article talks about making change in organizations. And he has a discussion of supervisors' reactions to job enrichment efforts, which are change efforts. And I think it's important to look at that, absorb it, and understand what it says about implementation of any change in an organization. He kind of flips to a more optimistic discussion of how this can impact supervisors in a positive way, but he's also giving very good information about what the issues are when people attempt to adopt change in organizations. In this case, change is the implementation of job enrichment to improve the motivation of the workforce. So go ahead and take a look at it. I think you'll see immediately the connection into the historic material that we've already talked about in class, and we'll be developing out of this need satisfaction tradition that Herzberg represents as we talk about individual behavior in organizations.